Locked on NFL Thursday. We got a great Thursday night football matchup in the AFC East between the Buffalo Bills and the New England Patriots. And we got a crazy story talking about Tom Brady going back to New England, what it would entail, and how likely is it. We will discuss. Then there are a couple of division races out there that are incredibly tight as we enter into December. Who do we think will win those matchups? And then finally, we will look at week 13 and give our best games of the week. All of that and more on a Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. Let's roll.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Football fans, it is Thursday, and that means it's time to kick off your NFL week here with the Locked On NFL podcast. I am one of your local experts, Tyler Rowland, here with my partner in crime, Alex Clancy, ready to break down this Thursday night football matchup. A rumor about Tom Brady going back to the Patriots, the best division races that we have, and the best matchups of the week. We're going to start with this Thursday night football matchup. Before we get into it, want to let you know that today's episode of Locked On NFL is presented by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users get a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com. Promo code Locked On. Thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen every day. Make sure to subscribe on any and all platforms for free Monday through Friday NFL coverage. But we got the Bills against the Patriots. The last we saw of these teams, the Bills were shellacking the Patriots in the playoffs. The Patriots, obviously, at 6-5 after getting beat down last week, are holding on to their playoff life. Buffalo trying to make that run and get hot as they get into the playoffs. Alex, how do you think this game goes? And do you think, like we talked about last week, it's just another coronation of Josh Allen?
You know, it's interesting because we talked last week before the Thanksgiving slate, and I picked New England to beat Minnesota, and they very well could have. That was, a last possession type of game, even though, it was a one-score game, and those are games that Bill Belichick wins. We've seen armor softening around the Buffalo Bills in Orchard Park over the last handful of weeks with Josh Allen's injury, et cetera. But he's still obviously exemplary, 1-1A, him and Patrick Mahomes in the NFL. And Bill Belichick wins these games. It's at home. It's Thursday night. It's a division opponent where he just wants to say, you know what, buddy? I'm going to throw 3 times and beat you like they did in the snow last year against Buffalo. And, I still think Buffalo wins this game, but this is much more about Bill Belichick for me than it is for the Buffalo Bills, because the Bills are going to be 1-1, and we'll talk about that in the second segment in the AFC East this year. But I want to see what Bill Belichick's got. I want to see, because these are games that he used to win, unmatched, overmatched, not overmatched, and I want to see it happen on Thursday night. I think it'd be a huge, huge opportunity for him to reinitiate himself as a force, as a coach, even if the talent may not be what it's been over the last 20 years in Foxborough.
Yeah, and I'm with you, and I think this is a big moment for Bill Belichick. And for me, specifically, it's because of the defense. Last week, the Patriots gave up a gob of points to the Minnesota Vikings. I believe it was 30 points in that game, 30-plus points. So the Patriots need to be a defensive-led team that relies on the run game and puts Mac Jones in positions to succeed. And this is a big moment because if they drop to 6-6, the reality of the situation with their division and the Jets at 7-4, the Bills at 8-3, the Dolphins at 8-3, what the AFC is right now, I just don't see the Patriots being able to keep pace if they drop this game. So they really need this one. But if they lose this game, things will get even more spicy based on an article we got from Jeff Howe in The Athletic on Wednesday that laid out a plausible scenario where Tom Brady could return as a free agent to the New England Patriots, who have a good defense, have some weapons, have a good run game, return home to New England, and then Mac Jones would be traded. There was some other mention about possibly the Titans being in the Tom Brady race this offseason. I don't know about that, but just focusing on this New England Patriots rumor, how likely do you think it is that Tom Brady would return? Then the Patriots would trade Mac Jones away. And do you even think that would be the good move for the Patriots if they could realistically do it?
Here's the thing. If they believed in Mac Jones, this wouldn't be a conversation.
Right.
They'd have to trade away their franchise quarterback for 32 games, who they don't really believe in. You knew about Tom Brady right when he stepped on the field in New England. Young quarterbacks have it.
Right.
Jalen Hurts, perfect example. His rookie year, he came in, they beat New Orleans. New Orleans was a world beater that year. He said, you know what? I don't care how it's going to happen. I'm going to win this game. They almost beat the Cardinals. The next week in Arizona, we saw it. I covered the Cardinals. In Arizona, we saw it. Like, the kid has it immediately. And we haven't seen if Mac Jones does or not, besides doing the gritty in the Pro Bowl. Like, we don't really know from him what he has. Would this be the best storyline for an entire 17-game, 18-week season? 1,000,000%. Him against Josh Allen twice a year, him against Tua and the Dolphins twice a year, him and against the up-and-coming Jets. He's never seen an AFC East like this, which is the only thing that makes me wonder, does he really want to play against those defenses? Does he really want to play his last year potential in the NFL in the cold, in the boring Foxborough, and against those defenses, against those teams? Because he doesn't want to go out 4-13 in his last stint in the NFL, regardless of how old he is.
Yeah, I think this is very similar to what a lot of us listening and doing the show right now have experienced. You want that old thing back. Try to light that flame back up, and it just doesn't burn the way that it used to. So I'm going to say, although I do agree, I don't think Mac Jones is it. I don't think the Patriots have solved any problems there. He's a replaceable level quarterback, and I think we saw that with Bailey Zappi out there, Zappy Hour. Yeah. So to me, this is more of the it's possible because the Patriots don't believe in Mac Jones, as you said. I think it's best for both parties to move on. Don't try to walk back through that closed door. But now, with that being said,
let me ask you, before we move on, I want to ask you this, because Belichick has been very selfless in its entirety. He's had autonomy. He's been the GM. People don't know that he's the GM. He's been a terrible drafter of picks. I know him and Robert Kraft, they have a brain trust there, but he's technically, the GM of the New England Patriots. Do you think that it's a situation where they would mortgage everything for the future for the next 3 or 4 years to just accumulate talent under the say you bring in Tom Brady? Are you trading 2 first-round picks for a wide receiver 1? Are you signing a top-tier running back? Are you bringing in offensive linemen and spending all this money on offense? Because you've got young pieces there that you don't need to pay yet, Ramondre Stevenson, etc. Would they mortgage everything for one more go-round
if I were
Tom Brady?
If I were them, I would do it. If you got word from Belichick that this, hey, it's a last dance situation, Brady's going to come back for 1 year. If I'm Robert Kraft, who's, getting up there in age as well, I might do it. I might try one more time for the kids. You know what I mean?
So awesome.
But anyways, moving right along, we're going to talk about some of the hottest division races. There's a couple of different ones out there, 2 in the AFC, 1 in the NFC. They're going to be very, very fun to watch as we go down the stretch. But before we get into that, want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Audible. Audible is releasing a slate of new football podcasts that we're sure you're going to love. Find Think Like a Champion now, wherever you get your podcast. Think Like a Champion is a brand new podcast from Russell Wilson and Audible. Russ is a champion on the field, but off it, we rarely know the grind on the path to greatness. With Russell Wilson, though, we certainly know his grind on the path to greatness, but you're going to get even more insight into that. Episodes are going to feature Olympic medalists and NFL stars and business leaders. It's going to be available free on Audible or wherever you get your podcast. Head to the Locked On Presents podcast feed for a sneak peek of Think Like a Champion, or catch a full series available anywhere you get podcasts, available everywhere right now. Audible, get in the game.
He is Tyler Rowland of Locked on Titans at TikTok Titans on Twitter. I am Alex Clancy, host of Locked on Cardinals at Clancy's Corner on Twitter. Thanks for making Locked on NFL your first listen each and every day, free and available on all platforms. For your second listen today, check out Locked on Sports today. From the games that matter the most in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked on can provide. Locked on Sports today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. There are some fascinating division races. And there are two that we're going to highlight and one we're going to honorable mention. The two highlighted ones are both in the AFC. And they're fascinating in different ways this year because you didn't necessarily think that one team could repeat and the other team could keep up. And then the other one is just a popcorn watching filled division that really came out of nowhere, it seems. Like you thought that these teams would be good, but didn't know that the team leading the division would be this good. So first, Tyler, let's roll into this, okay? The AFC North, okay? The Cincinnati Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens. Okay, so you have two teams, one of which was a victim of its – victim is not the right word. Their situation was a little bit different with the Cleveland Browns. Deshaun Watson set to return this weekend in Houston. And the other was the Pittsburgh Steelers, obviously going through a transitional phase with Kenny Pickett. Mitch Trubisky looks to be Kenny Pickett. But you have the two stars in that division. In the Bengals, made the Super Bowl last year, and the Ravens, who were decimated with injury last year. Where do you see this division ending up through week 12 with a handful of games good to go?
Right now, both teams at 7-4, but there is a decisive advantage in the division record, which is the number one tiebreaker for these things. The Ravens are 2-0 in division and have a head-to-head win over the Bengals. The Bengals are 1-3 in the division with the loss to Pittsburgh, a loss to Cleveland, and a loss to Baltimore. So I think that this is a peculiar situation where the Bengals are the better team. Like right now, if they played each other, I think the Bengals would win the game. I think if they played a neutral opponent, I think the Bengals have a better chance against a neutral opponent than the Ravens. The Bengals are playing much better football overall than the Ravens right now. But this is why we love the NFL so much. This is why no one can replicate the importance of an NFL game except maybe high-level college football at best. No other sport can do it. Because that game between the Ravens and the Bengals early in the year, which I think was like 17-16 or something like that, close game.
17, yeah.
19, okay. That right there is going to be critical. And it was early in the season, and it's going to matter so much at the end of the year because unless the Ravens completely drop the ball here, they have 4 games left, and only one of them is the Bengals. So they're going to get 2 games against I don't know if they played the Steelers or the Browns yet. I think they played the Browns already. So they're going to get 1 game against the Browns, 2 against the Steelers, and only 1 against the Bengals. With already having that lead, I just think the Ravens have the ability, because of their early season success, they have the ability to close it out, even if the Bengals are playing better football down the stretch. So I think the Ravens hold on and find a way to win the division with the tiebreaker, maybe even if them and the Bengals have the same record.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. And there's one thing that I do say on this podcast and elsewhere a lot. If your playing style can transfer regardless of weather, you have an upgrade over opposing teams. And the Baltimore Ravens, if they were told you cannot throw the ball once this game, I still think they could probably win 4 or 5 games in a season. You know, and that's not to take away from Lamar Jackson. That's just an arbitrary rule that I put in. And look at this down the stretch for the Ravens, okay? And you alluded to it. They played Cleveland. They beat Cleveland a handful of weeks ago. They go Broncos at home, at Steelers, at Browns, Falcons at home, Steelers at home, and the Bengals on the road for in week 18. That is favorable, would be the understatement of the century. Have no idea what the Falcons are going to be 3 weeks from now. They're going to have to play Deshaun Watson in a couple weeks, but they play the Steelers twice. It's a it's a division matchup, but still, it's the Steelers, and they're not good this year. So, I mean, I'm taking Lamar Jackson above all else. When it gets cold, when you need like methodical game plans, I trust John Harbaugh. Regardless of how porous the defense has been, and they were supposed to be great this year, they really haven't been. I'm taking the Ravens in that matchup. Now, let's pivot. The other one, which is this is the best one of the year because we didn't really know what Miami was going to be. It's the AFC East. So it's Buffalo, who looked to be world beaters, lost a couple games, Josh Allen, with the UCL issue. And then Tua Tagovailoa could legitimately be the MVP this year if they go on a run and Jalen Hurts. He's in the conversation, which after almost being out of the league, it seemed after a year, nobody believed in him. Look at what's happened with Mike McDaniel there in Miami. So with this matchup, Tyler Rowland of Locked On Titans, who are you taking in this divisional matchup? Seems to be a little bit more skewed than the other, but you surprised me before.
Well, the Dolphins have the head-to-head right now in the one game that they've played. They do have one game left. The Dolphins have the edge. Yeah, it was awesome. The Dolphins have the edge in division record, 2-1. The Bills are 0-2. So I think that a lot of this comes down to tiebreakers. If both these teams kind of play it out, I think the Bills will win the next game against the Dolphins. I don't know why, but I just have a feeling that that'll be the case as we get further into the season. And I think that both of these teams could finish relatively close to each other. But with the Bills already being at 0-2, and even if the Bills basically have to go undefeated in the division going forward. You know what? I am going to go with the Bills. I think the Bills can go undefeated the rest of the way against the Jets and the Patriots and win their one game against the Dolphins. I think ultimately they have the same record at the end of the year, but the Bills win that tiebreaker with a little division hot streak to close the season. Give me the Bills in that one.
Yeah, and this is simple for me. I'm going to go back, see last argument. The Bills can win anywhere. I don't think Miami's offense can win in the cold when it needs to. They throw the ball down the field. Tua is brittle, okay? Hitting the ground when it's cold is a lot different than hitting the ground in South Beach, and they don't have a rushing attack that you trust. They just don't. I mean, Jeff Wilson Jr. is fine. Raheem Mostert, when he's healthy, is fine. I trust Josh Allen's legs. I trust James Cook. I trust Devin Singletary. Devin Singletary balled out towards the tail end of last season when it was cold. And you know what? They don't run the ball ever. They have more this season than they did the year before. They've won in the cold before. I trust that. I trust Stephon Diggs. I trust Dawson Knox. And most importantly, even with Von Miller out, which is terrible, I trust that defense. That's been built. They are a winning machine in games that matter until they play Patrick Mahomes. And that's the only thing that's going to matter for them is winning games and then meeting Patrick Mahomes probably in the AFC Championship game. So I'm taking Buffalo, and I don't think this is going to be really as contested as the AFC North is going to be, even though they have the same record right now.
Well, that'll be interesting to watch going down the stretch if Miami can start or continue winning in these winter months. But I think that Buffalo defense, like you said, even without Von Miller, I mean, they got Sean McDermott as their head coach, and he's fantastic. We do have an honorable mention as one of the division races to watch here. It's not quite as close as the other two that we mentioned, but the Dallas Cowboys do have the ability at 8-3 to catch up with the Philadelphia Eagles, who are 10-1. So, Alex, just quickly, what are your thoughts on maybe Dallas getting back in that matchup?
I feel weird about this. I feel weird. Like, I believe in Dallas. I think if you gave a 7-game series with Philly and Dallas, I'd pick Dallas.
Yeah,
I do.
Yeah,
and because the defense is great. Okay, Jalen Hurts. Like last week, we saw that they ended up winning, but it was like, whoa. Like you saw little like, oh no, maybe it was 2 weeks ago because they blew out Green Bay. Like there were like, I'm starting
against
to
Houston
see
on Thursday Night Football.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, so I'm starting to see some uncertainty at times that I didn't see for the first 5 or 7 weeks. And I know they went down a couple touchdowns against Jacksonville and then came back and led at the half, but I'm starting to see consistency with Dallas, and the win-loss isn't like it started like with Tony Pollard and Zeke both healthy. Ezekiel Elliott had a good year when he's played.
Yeah.
Solid. And the offensive line has been fine. And we talked about Dak Prescott being the best game manager of the NFL. Maybe he's ever seen, like he's that top tier game manager level where they don't have to ask him to do too much. Like, and the defense is stellar. I'm still going to pick Philly, but they've got a game coming up in a couple of weeks, which is going to be absolutely bonkers. I'm going to pick Philly, but it's closer than the 10-1 and 8-3 records that they have now.
Yeah, I hear you on that. Well, we're going to move forward here talking about the best games of Week 13. Before we get into it, do want to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by betonline.net, your number one source for betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get all the latest odds and trends for every professional league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and esports. They've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those too at Bet Online. We're always going to point you to Bet Online because they're the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. Bet Online, where the game starts. All right, football fans, we are going to cap off this Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. We're going to get into our best games of the weekend. Before we do, I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On NFL your first listen every day. Make sure you subscribe on whatever platform you do stream for free Monday through Friday, NFL content all year long. As for your second listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Alex, looking at the best games of the week, and I got to do a little bit of home cooking because there's one matchup out there that I think is really, really good. It's going to be really fun to watch. It's the Tennessee Titans, the team that I cover, at 7-4 against the Philadelphia Eagles at 10-1. You mentioned it earlier. The Eagles haven't played their best football as of late. They had a good win against the Packers, but they allowed the Packers to score 33. The Commanders beat them finally. They had that up and down performance at Houston, even if they ended up winning by double digits. They had to pull it out late against the Colts by 1 point. So there's been some up and down play from the Eagles lately, but Jordan Davis, the big-time nose tackle rookie, should be coming back. That should help them with their run defense. They got their run game going against the Packers with over 300 yards. Jalen Hurts doing historic things out there. The Titans, on the other hand, reeling a tad bit after another physical loss to the Cincinnati Bengals that, quite frankly, took their spirit a little bit to get bullied and beat at their own game. Can the Titans rebound, or is this the Philly Eagles putting a stamp on their season saying, hey, things were a little rough. Maybe we got a little bored in the middle of the year, but we are back. We are going to slap this good team that's physical. And then on the other side is it the Titans. Are you going to come out and actually beat a good team for the first time all year? Or are you going to get beat again by a winning team and leave your status as a good football team even further in doubt at 7-5? I think this is going to have a big impact on these teams and how they feel about themselves going forward. I think it's two good football teams that match up pretty well schematically in terms of strength and weaknesses. This will be an entertaining football game, so I had to throw that one out there first.
That was like the amuse-bouche for all of Locked On Titans this week. Thank you for that soliloquy there. Yeah.
There you go.
So I've got a couple. This is really a muck box. It's either a great game or a crap game that you'd rather
right.
Watch paint dry. So there's a couple ways you can go here. Number one, I mean, not for any good reason, but Cleveland and like Deshaun Watson's first game back.
Yes.
Like that's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say. I don't want to go more in depth about it because the game doesn't really matter, but seeing him play, is kind of fascinating.
We're all interested to see it, man. You shouldn't feel bad about it.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair.
Good
one
theater.
that I am interested in seeing is the Mike White Project Part 2 in Minnesota. Minnesota has proclivity to lose to quarterbacks, and they shouldn't. Cooper Rush last year, Sunday Night Football, I believe. Sunday night or Monday night, I can't remember where they end up winning that game. That one interests me, but it's still not. Like, we want to see who the Vikings are. Check out Luke Braun from Locked On Vikings, one of the best we got on this platform. Chiefs Bengals is fine, but the one that I want to see is Mike McDaniel going back to his hometown, to his home grounds for the last 4 seasons, I think, or 5 seasons before this, where he was the run game coordinator and then the OC for the 49ers, going back with the same run scheme that Kyle Shanahan had. Like, it's going to be fascinating to see that defense versus Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Mike Gesicki,
best defense in the NFL against maybe the best offense.
Yeah, and that's going to be really fun. I don't know why that hasn't been flexed. Oh, let me tell you why. Because the Cowboys are playing Sunday night, so they ain't flexing them.
Yeah. And the Colts, you know how people love Indy.
Oh yeah. How do you feel about Chris Ballard again? Anyways, I'm curious. So there are some really good games, especially in the afternoon slate. But I'm curious to see Mike McDaniel go back to Levi, and if they beat the 49ers, that will be his signature win this year over Buffalo earlier in the season. That was last possession wins. Like, this would be a very, very big win for Mike McDaniel's Rolodex.
Absolutely. And I just want to touch a little bit more on that game that you mentioned right before that. Chiefs at Bengals. The Bengals have beat the Chiefs twice in a row. I can't recall the last team to beat the Chiefs twice in a row like that. The Bengals are playing excellent football right now, maybe some of the best football in the NFL. They're probably going to get Jamar Chase back, even if it's on a limited basis. The Chiefs at 9-2, sitting pretty at the top of the AFC. But if they lost with the Dolphins at 8-3, the Bills at 8-3, the Bengals would then be 8-4. I mean, if the Chiefs lose this game, not only is it going to be punitive from a record standpoint, it's going to be punitive from a vibe standpoint in the AFC. I think this matchup, the Chiefs and the Bengals, may be the two best teams in the AFC, two of the top 4 teams in the entire NFL. I'm very high on Cincinnati. I think that will end up being one of the most talked about, most watched, most exciting games of the week. But that's going to do it for us today. A lot of good games out there to choose from, even if there are some stinkers in there as well. But we talked about the Patriots and the Bills on Thursday night, talked about Tom Brady maybe going back to New England, talked about tight division races, and capped off with the best games of Week 13. That is going to do it for me, Tyler Rowland, and my co-host, Alex Clancy. Enjoy the week of football, fans, and stay safe out there.